Rav Zilber, Rav Schwebel, Yeshiva for Rockaway, Yeshivas Novominsk. Right at the beginning of the year, all of you will have heard me say, when it says, Rashi says, in his parish in the Chumash, right at the beginning, when Hashem describes Adam Rishon, he uses two, Unclus uses one expression. He can speak, Inish Malalo. But Rashi says he can understand and he can speak. Rashi says understanding, which distinguishes us from all the animals and behemoths, is part of being able to speak. We have to be able to say it over as well. When I was speaking to the Rosh Yeshiva Shlita earlier on today, he told me that in Branovich, the Rachon and Wasserman used to send the Bochrim out on Shabbos. The Yeshiva used to send them out on Shabbos. And my Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Gurvitz, was his Chavrusa. And he used to bring us in, the younger light, to say a shir in front of him. It's a chelik of the Torah to be able not just to know it, but to be able to say it over. And as we all know, that's what really this competition is all about. It's what you've done, it's what you've achieved, and how you've grown to be able to understand that saying over Torah is a very, very choshev zach. With regards to how this is going to work, I should start by welcoming our very special guests. Rabbi Mordechai Becher, who's sitting here at the front. You may have seen him writing regularly for Hamadiyah magazine. He is a very old friend of mine. He is, in my mind, one of the most accomplished Torah scholars, serious Talmud Chacham, but also a scholar. If you want to know exactly who the Tanaim were, Rabbi Mordechai Becher. And to use unsere Yeshivische Sprach, he's also a Geschmacke Yid. So I'm very, very grateful to you, Rabbi Becher, for coming to be a judge here today. Reb Chaim Gitlis has helped me with this competition over the year when we've been, over the various years when I've been good. He's a Torah Yid, he learns constantly, he's a Kishmaki Yid too, and I'm very grateful, Chaim, for you coming and being one of our two judges for today. Just to remind everybody exactly how the competition works, and I'm sure you already know. So basically, there are three topics. Each of the teams has got to imagine the first one up will be speaking to a Frum audience. So, of course, it's going to start with the story. The story is going to connect to a Dvar Torah and connect well. There'll be marks given to the appropriateness of the shidduch between the Dvar Torah and the story, with a little musa drosha at the end. So the first boy imagines he's speaking to a Frum audience, and that means he can say in Hochinami. And Dafka and Mamish V'chulu, that's not a problem because it's a Frum audience. The next Bocha up will be speaking, or Bochrim up, will be speaking to a mixed audience. Das heißt, you've got family Simcha, and you've just discovered there's third or fourth cousins of yours in Hoboken. You didn't even know they existed. Nebach, they've got no kesher to Yiddishkeit at all. So what you say at this Simcha could maybe have the possibility of being Makarav them to Yiddishkeit, but there are Frum people there as well. So you've got to say something to shovel kol nefesh, but you've got to use language that they will be able to understand, and your Dvar Torah has to work for them. So the judges will be looking to see the appropriateness of your content to the audience you're speaking to. The third bocher is going to be speaking to a non-Frum audience, a non-Jewish non-Frum audience, and he's going to be able to explain a Jewish concept to them. L'moshel, it could be something simple like why we sit in sukkahs. Or it could be something a bit more complicated, like why we're against organ transplant, certain organ transplant, why we're against euthanasia, mercy killing, something like that. And then there is the captains. The captains have the most difficult job of all, as I'm sure you'll remember, because all of you have been victims of my teaching of this for a long time. And the captain, he has to come up here, as he's going to do in a second, while I flip a coin. When I toss that coin, he has to decide, if he wins, then he has to decide which of the team speaks first. Which team speaks first? Team speaking first gives you an advantage. It's like yeshiva, it's like the bar mitzvah boy who's nervous. You say, let him get it over with. So if the captain assesses that his team is nervous, then maybe he wants to put them on first. On the other hand, if they're not nervous, maybe there's an advantage in letting the other team go first. If he wins the coin toss, then automatically he gets to say to the opponent, the captain of the opponent team, you're going to speak first or second. The next thing they're going to do is he gets to choose which of the three topics the opposing captain has to speak about. Is he speaking to a frum audience, a mixed audience, and a non-frum audience? Which means each captain's got 3 droshas in their back pocket. And then after he's given him a topic, of the remaining 2 topics, the opponent will give his opponent which topic he's going to speak about. There is a little light in front which you won't see, but for the teams, let me just remind you that the light there will be white until 3 minutes. All boys are aiming for 3.5 minutes. 10 seconds short is no big deal. 10 seconds more than that is no big deal. Anything more than that, then there starts to be penalty points. So Bekitzer, there will be after exactly 3 minutes, a green light comes on, and after the green light, 30 seconds later, a red light, that's when you should be stopping, and after that, it's penalty points if you go over 10 seconds. So, I just was feeling in my pocket for the coin that I specially brought for this, and I can't find it, which is very embarrassing. Oh, yes, I did. Voila. Thank you. Years of practice. So, Bekitzer, could the 2 captains please stand up? Right. Quiet, please. When there's quiet, we will do the coin toss. Okay. Right. Should we give this to the guests to choose?
Yeah.
Oh, very nice. You're choosing heads, okay? So I'll go over to the judges. It was heads. Therefore, the captain of Novominsk has the advantage, and he will first of all tell me which team is going to speak first. Which means you're up first, and then you're going to give your opposite captain a topic to speak about. Go. Yeah, tell him now. You're speaking to a mixed audience, a non-frum audience. Okay? I have got an iPad over there which turns into a very nice stopwatch, and I'll be able to time. For the judges, I'll be able to say afterwards exactly how long each boy spoke, so they'll be able to assess whether or not they went over or were under and give them points accordingly. Okay? So at this point, Rabbi Sai, I really would ask you, please take this seriously. It's so unfair if you're going to put anybody off, even if you don't mean to put somebody off, you can do so by not looking at them. Okay? So I think we will now therefore turn it over to the teams, and they were speaking first. The first person to speak is somebody speaking to a frum audience, and I will start the clock after you've explained who you are, where you're from, and who you're talking to. That's when your 3.5 minutes starts.
My name is Tzvi Weiss. I'm speaking to a frum audience for Yeshiva for Rockaway.
Hold on a second.
Purim was fast approaching. There was a group of Yeshiva Bacharim filming a Purim spiel. One of them had an idea, and he brought it up to the rest of the guys. What was the idea? The idea was to get the footage of the guys going over to another school nearby and spray painting the name of their yeshiva on it, and just to get the footage for the Purim spiel. The idea wasn't to actually leave the spray paint and vandalize the school. It was just to get the footage, the spiel, but figure out how to take it off before we leave a stain. Anyways, the rest of the group agreed to the idea, thought it was a good idea, and so they continue with it. They go, they buy the spray paint, and they test it out, and they figure out how and when exactly to take it off, so it wouldn't leave a stain, and they continue with the plan. So that night, under the cover of darkness, they go to the nearby school. Right next to the door, by the entrance, they spray paint in big letters, whatever the yeshiva's name was, massive letters. It was at that point they realized that the stone they tested out the spray paint on was very different than the stone that they actually spray painted on in the end. And now they realized that they're not going to be able to take it off. To make matters worse, they just heard that the whole entire school, even though it was at night, middle of the night, they're coming back from a trip in 20 minutes. Staff, teachers, everything. So they start thinking of all these crazy ideas. Guys want to get mops. Guys are trying to work out a power washer. 5 minutes passes, the scrubbing, nothing's coming off. 10 minutes passes, nothing's coming off. 15 minutes, they're trying the power washer, it's not working. So they realize they're going to get caught if they stay in the scene. So they flee the scene, and they watch from afar as the whole school comes back, the buses, all the kids pile out, teachers pile out. Since it was dark, miraculously, none of them noticed the spray paint on the wall. So they do the thing, 30 minutes later, the rest of them go home, and then they get back to scrubbing. Finally, hours into the night, they figure out a certain method of scrubbing, and maybe 4 or 5 a.m., they say the spray paint's off enough, and they go home and hope for the best. The Rambam in Hilchos Tshuva brings down a Gemara in Yuma, Pe'em Beis, which says, Kol Aimer Echtav Ashuv, Ein Masmikin Biyadei Lasas Tshuva. Whoever says, I'm going to do Averis, but I'm going to do Tshuva, so nothing's going to happen, Kadosh Baruch Hu doesn't allow him to do tshuva. Now, the Mishnah over there in the Rambam brings down, it's not that Kadosh Baruch Hu doesn't let him do tshuva, he just hides the derech of tshuva from his eyes. It makes it a lot harder. It's a similar Gemara in Bava Kama, Nomer Aleph, which says, Kol ha'omer Kadosh Baruch Hu vachon, yivatzu chayev. Whoever says that Kadosh Baruch Hu overlooks Averis, he will be overlooked on. We can see from these two Gemaras that if a person rationalizes before he does an Avera, and he says, that he'll do the Avera, but either HaKadosh Baruch Hu will forgive him, or he'll do tshuva for it. The man is a fool and he's horribly mistaken. The spray painter thought that he'd be able to do something that crazy, like spray painting a school, and be able to get away with it, and just be able to take off the spray paint. Clearly, he was horribly mistaken. The same could be said about a person that does Averis. What he doesn't realize, however, is that Averis, like spray paint, don't come out easy. Thank you.
The target was 3 minutes 30 seconds. That was 3 minutes 30 seconds.
My name is Yeshivas. I'm from Yeshivas Novominsk. I'll be speaking to our Frum audience. The Mishnah in Masechtas Baba Kama, Daf Tzaddik Vav Amud Beis, starts off, Gazal behema v'hiskina, avadim v'hiskinu. One who steals a behema and the behema ages, therefore has no power anymore, or someone that steals avadim, servants, and they age. So what's the halacha? How does he pay back? So the Mishnah goes on to say a psak. But l'chera, there's a pashta dia going on here. Why does the Mishnah start off with the lashon yachid and then go to lashon rabim? Behema, which is one, and avadim, which is two. I thought that perhaps we could answer, as we all know, in a few days we will be going into the Yom Tov of Shavuos, where we commemorate when HaKadosh Baruch Hu was mekadosh us with his Torah, and with that he was mekadosh with his Torah, he put on us a tchuna of avdos, where he listed for us Taryag mitzvahs, and we have to fulfill those Taryag mitzvahs, and we have to be loyal avadim to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If chas v'shalom, a yid will veer off these Taryag mitzvahs, and he won't do these Taryag mitzvahs, then he's kaviyachal losing his avdos to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. On the other hand, someone that really fulfills his chun of avdus, and he really listens to the Torah and does what the Torah asks of him, then not only is he being a loyal Eved, he'll also gain, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give him a certain ingrained Yiras Shamayim that no one else can have. I saw a beautiful story which I think illustrates this point very well. The Ksais HaCheshen at the end of his life he was very old, he was very weak, and there were basic things he couldn't do. So every day, one baruch from the yeshiva used to come and help him out with certain basic things that he needed to do. One day a baruch came in and he was helping the Ksais get dressed. So he takes his sack and he's about to put it on to the Ksais' foot. He puts it on, and all of a sudden the Ksais starts screaming, "Sishtecht, it's poking me." So the baruch got scared, he took it off, he checked if there was a splinter of wood or a pebble, and he sees there's nothing there. He shakes it out to make sure, and he puts it on again. And again, Sishtecht. This keeps on repeating itself until the baruch realizes that this is no physical matter. Rather, it's a more ruchnistic matter. Because the Ksais really fulfilled his chun of avdas to its full. And therefore, he was able to feel something that most of us, I think, can't. If that's true, I think we can answer what's going on in the Mishnah. The Tana is listing for us halacha and chesed mishpat. But I was thinking that it's not only halacha and chesed mishpat. The Tana is also trying to convey to us a message that when it comes to how many behemoths he stole, okay, he did something wrong, but he stole only one behemoth. When it comes to how many avadim he stole, he didn't just steal one of it. He stole two avadim because he just went away from what the Torah asked him to do, not to steal, and with that he lost his chun of avdas, his own chun of avdas within. Therefore, when the Mishnah said avadim ve'eskinu, the Mishnah was referring to not only the eved that he took from this person, also to the eved within him. Thank you.
3 minutes, 15 seconds.
Is there a way to adjust this? Okay. No, we'll work this. All right, that's perfect. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks so much. Tzvihan, Yeshiva for Rockaway. I'll be speaking to a mixed audience. The date was December 24th, 1990. My grandfather, he was heading from work, and he had to run one quick errand. He had to stop by a furniture store, pick up some money from a friend. He's driving, but with the way traffic ended up shaping up, he realized he'll only go into the store if there's a stop right in front. It was taking too long. Lo and behold, there's a stop right in front of the store, practically calling his name. So he pulls over, heads into the store, and as he's walking into the store, he remembers he still has his gun on him from when he went to target practice earlier that day. He walks into the store, and there's something strange. The store's empty. Usually when there would be customers and employees working there, there's nobody there. He's thinking, what could the explanation possibly be? They remembered, of course. It's around the holiday time. The guy probably wanted to leave early. They wanted to go home. And that's why it was empty. But the guy that he needed to pick up money from, he'd probably be in his office in the back. So he starts walking towards the back of the store. And he sees out of the corner of his eye, which shocked him, 2 big men holding several people hostage, tied up along the wall. He didn't know what to do. Decided he'll walk out of the store, try not to make a sound. And once he's outside, he'll find a phone and call the cops. He's walking out, and his feet away from the door. And all of a sudden, he feels a hand grab him and a gun to his head. The thug starts leading my grandfather to the back, and thoughts are racing through my grandfather's mind. He sees stories like this all the time on the news. Never thought it would happen to him. And he wondered, why in those stories nobody ever resist? Why did they just roll over and take whatever was coming to them? In that moment, my grandfather knew he had to act. In one fell swoop motion, he pulls the gun out of the side of his jacket and puts the gun on the other guy's head. Shoots him. The man drops to the floor, and now he starts hearing shots firing at him from the second crook. My grandfather starts firing back, and all of a sudden there's silence. The crook fell to the floor, dead, and my grandfather saved himself and everybody in the store. When the Jews escaped Egypt, they were surrounded in the desert on all four sides. The Egyptians on one side, the Red Sea on another side, mountains and rough terrain all around them. The Jews didn't know where to go. Hashem told Moshe, tell the Jews to jump into the Red Sea. That's where our salvation is going to come from. Moshe released the message over to the Jews, and the Jews look at him like he's crazy. Us jumping into the sea? Besides the fact that the sea's deep, but we're men, women, and children. Not all of us could swim through that. They're all debating what to do, and all of a sudden a blur, a flash, passes by everybody. Nachshon ben Amminadab jumps in to the Red Sea. The sea splits, and the Jews are saved. Now we see the rest is history. When I asked my grandfather, what sort of action took over him at that moment to shoot that guy, he told me it's very simple. It's better to go down with a fight than go down with nothing at all. Similarly in life, when life presents you with a tough situation, it's better to go down with a fight than go down with nothing at all.
Three minutes, 46 seconds.
That's good? Yeah. Should we wait for them? Should we wait? Lights on red.
Hi, my name is Romy Klein, 11th grade Yeshivas Novominsk. I'll be speaking to a mixed audience. We're all well aware of the war going on right now between Russia and Ukraine, which started approximately 3.5 months ago. There's very intense fighting going on in various different parts of Ukraine, where Russia is attempting to take over. Ukrainians are resisting tremendously, and they're doing a lot better than anybody imagined and thought they would possibly be able to do. Russia is fighting back well, but they weren't prepared for such resistance from the Ukrainians, and accordingly, they're taking heavy losses because of this. The Ukrainian government was reaching out to all other countries to help them, to ask them for help, for assistance in the fighting effort. Just recently, America gave over $50 billion to Ukraine to help them in the fighting effort, although America's not actually giving any physical troops to the Ukrainians to help them fight against the Russians. There's been over 6 million refugees have left Ukraine already, going to various countries around Ukraine to get away from the fighting, and there's still millions more who are attempting and trying to leave. Although Ukraine is not allowing any adults, men over the age of 18, to leave because they need them to assist in the fighting effort. In Ukraine, at the start of the war, there were approximately 400,000 Jews who were living in Ukraine, of which by now approximately 300,000 have already left. There are another 100,000 who are still trying to get out, or not all of them are trying to get out, but there's still 100,000 still there. From the ones who are trying to get out, there's various different organizations and companies that are assisting them and helping them once they get out of Ukraine, setting them up in different countries, bringing them to have schools for them, and all that different type of stuff. In Ukraine currently right now, there's between 300 and 700 Jews that are fighting in the army against the Russians. Not all of them which were religious, but approximately 300 to 700. A story which illustrates what I actually know firsthand, that there are Jews and religious Jews fighting in the army there, is that earlier last week I was in shul. I walk out of shul after davening, and a guy comes over and tells me he's collecting. He has a blue and yellow on his blazer, so I give him $1. The guy tells me, "You want to see what your money's going towards?" He opens up a loose leaf, and in the loose leaf is a picture of 2 teenage boys who look like regular yeshiva boys. And he tells me these 2 boys right now are fighting in Ukraine against the Russians. Tell me this boy we're collecting to have food and for money for him to be able to live there. The other boy we're collecting for a helmet. We see how much the Ukrainians are not giving them that much. They give them a gun, they tell them go fight. The question is, should Jews be fighting for Ukraine or not? Should Jews fight overall? What is the Jewish outlook in regards to fighting? We know that in the start of the war, the Agudas Yisrael of America told all the Jewish communities here in America and throughout the world to say Tehillim. They told them to say Kapitel Kuf Lamed, Psalm 130, and Kapitel Chaf, Psalm 20, in order to assist and help the Jews that are in Ukraine to get out or to stay safe. They actually recently just stopped that. They said we shouldn't say it anymore, but that's what they said we should say. We know by the times in the Megillah, when Esther was going into Achashverosh, into Ahasuerus, we know that she told the Jews, "Pray for me." She didn't tell them to go fight. She didn't tell them to do such a thing. She said, "Pray for me when I go in." We see from there's a side to say that maybe we should fight. We should pray. Although we see in the times of the Maccabees, when they were fighting against the Greeks, we saw they were fighting there. So we see that throughout Jewish history, there's different sides. Should we fight or should we actually pray instead? But as it always goes throughout all Jewish history, we should always follow what our Gedolim say. And before you do anything, ask your Gedolim.
Three minutes, 40 seconds.
Ezra Brody. I'm speaking to a non-Frum audience, and I'm from the Yeshiva for Rockaway. George Pickering from Pinehurst, Texas, is standing in a hospital room next to his son's hospital bed. His son had a stroke 2 months before and had been in a coma ever since. The doctors had decided that day they were going to pull the life of his son. As they come in to turn off the machines, George pulls out a gun and threatens that anyone who comes near his son, he will shoot them. The hospital staff, frightened, quickly call the police. They get into a 3-hour standoff with George, in which he keeps repeating his threat. After these 3 hours, he gives up, he hands over his gun, and lets himself be taken in. When they asked him afterwards why he gave up so suddenly, he said, "When they came in to take my son off life support, I wasn't ready just to give up yet. But during those 3 hours, my son kept squeezing my hand. And at that point, I knew he was going to live, and his son went on to have a full recovery." But this is not the only case where the doctors pronounced the person dead, and they went on to have a recovery. And these are only the stories we know about. But imagine how many stories would have been allowed to happen had the doctors waited a little bit longer. In the Netherlands, where euthanasia, or mercy killings, is legal, the #1 cause of death is death by doctors. Now imagine the person lying in that bed was your child. How would you like it if just like that, the doctor could decide that your child no longer deserved life because they thought that, oh, he's just lying there, he's a vegetable. Under Orthodox Jewish law, euthanasia, or mercy killings by doctors, is prohibited. The reason is that the quality of life argument is based on the theory that we as humans can decide what a quality life is. But we as Orthodox Jews believe that life is given by God, and so too, only to be taken by God. And as we see from the Netherlands, it's a very slippery slope when you give someone power over life and death. There's one other story. There was a 7-year-old from Mobile, Alabama, named Trent McKinley. He was playing by a friend's house, and his friend was driving a tractor that had a trailer behind it. His friend short stops in the tractor, the trailer flips over, lands on top of Trenton, and it's not looking good. They rush him to the hospital, put him on life support, and the doctors tell his parents, look, we can keep him on life support. The problem is that we've done some testing, and we realized that if we harvest his organs while he's still alive, we could save 5 other children. So his parents, with a heavy heart after a couple days of debating, decide that they're going to pull him off life support. They sign the papers, and the doctors tell them the next day we're going to pull him off life support. The next morning, his mother gets a call from the doctors. Your son's brain has shown activity. We think he's going to pull through. We see from here again, doctors a lot of times are way too quick to pull someone off life support just because, oh, he's lying there on the bed. His brain's not functioning. But if we as Jews believe that life is sacred because it is given by God, so too we should believe that we as humans have no right to take life. Lord Jacobowitz once said that the greatest thing God did when he was creating the world was stop creating. The lesson is that even though you have the power to do something, it takes greater power not to do it.
Three minutes, 29 seconds.
Hi, my name is Yitzchak Middleman from Yeshivas Novominsk. I'm going to be addressing a non-frum audience. Albert Einstein was one time traveling on a train. Now, the way that the trains worked in those days weren't like we have today, where we all have Metro cards. Quick scan, take a ride. Back then, you had to buy a ticket, which had all your information printed on the ticket. You get onto the train, the conductor comes up and down all the train cars, punches a hole in your ticket. When the conductor approached Albert Einstein, he asked, "Professor Einstein, your ticket, please." He started checking all his pockets, started checking his bags, couldn't find his ticket. The conductor said, "Don't worry, Professor Einstein, I know who you are. You're a trustworthy man. You definitely bought a ticket. You don't have to look for it." But he didn't give up there. Albert Einstein got up and started pacing back and forth through the train. The conductor came over to him. The conductor asked, "Professor Einstein, are you okay?" He said, "Yeah, don't worry about me." "What are you doing?" "I'm looking for my ticket. Don't worry about me. You continue on. I'm looking for my ticket." "Professor Einstein, why are you looking for your ticket?" He replied, "I need my ticket because I don't know where I'm going." Many years ago, one of the Israeli defense ministers, Moshe Dayan, amongst the many things he was famous for, one of them was the fact that he had an eye patch. He was one time driving down one of the Israeli highways, 140 kilometers per hour, which for an Israeli is not fast. He looks behind him and he sees those flashing lights and the blaring sirens. Pulls over to the side. Officer comes over, takes one look into the car, and he doesn't believe his eyes. "Moshe Dayan? You? The role model for everyone? Who everyone looks up to? You're the one that's speeding here? Just for that, I'm going to triple your fine." Moshe Dayan, he said, "Officer, look, take a look at me. I only have one eye. It's either I look at the road or I look at the speedometer. You tell me." Very often, we live that one-eyed life, where we tend to focus on ourselves, yet not on others. As we approach the festival of Shavuos, where we all stood together by Mount Sinai, hand in hand, no one nudging the other, no one complaining about the other. There's no better time than now to open that second eye and to focus on others, to know where we're going, to know what to do next, and to care for one another.
Three minutes, 30 seconds.
I'm going to be speaking to a mixed audience from Yeshiva for Rockaway. The year was 1998. There were a few Bachurim from Yeshiva Shayashiv and for Rockaway. They were going to Queens for Shabbat. So they get to their host, make some small talk, and they settle in for the Friday night dinner. And he says, "Oh, where are you guys studying?" And they say, "Oh, we're into the Shayashiv College in Rockaway." He says, "Oh, you're in Shayashiv? Oh boy, do I have a story to tell you about Shayashiv." He says, "Give me a minute." He leaves the room. He comes back holding a big kippah, bigger than they've ever seen before. He says, "This is my Shayashiv story." He says, the year was 1971. Back before I was called Chaim, I was Harry. And like many other Jewish-aged, college-aged kids at the time, I was looking for something more in my life, some spirituality to fill a void. The hippie movement just wasn't enough. So a friend suggested, "Why don't you check out Shayashiv in Rockaway?" I said, "Okay, sounds like a plan." I hopped on the 8 train one Saturday morning, my jeans and t-shirt, and I got off at the last stop, Mott Avenue, turned the corner, and I walk up to the big yeshiva edifice, big pink building on Central Avenue. I go inside, and I find myself looking through the big glass windows of the main sanctuary. Everybody there was dressed in their Shabbat finest, hats, suits, ties, and I was there in my t-shirt and jeans. I felt very uncomfortable. No kippah. All of a sudden, I see through the window the biggest man in the room walking towards me up the aisle, standing at 6'6", big beard, long coat. And I started to get very nervous. Is this man going to kick me out for not adhering to the dress code? All of a sudden, he opens the door, says with a big smile, "Why don't you come inside?" I look up at him, and I say, "But I'm not wearing a kippah." He says, "Oh, that's not a problem. You could take mine." And he takes that big kippah off his head and hands it to me. And that was the moment that really changed my life and led me to become a Torah-observant Jew. The verse says in Shir HaShirim, Song of Songs, "Ani yeshena v'li bi'er." I was asleep, but my heart was awake. There are many ways to explain what this verse is referring to. But the rabbi in that story, Rabbi Shlomo Freifeld, who's my great-grandfather, used these words to teach us a valuable lesson in serving God and being a better person. Ani yeshena, when the eye is asleep, when you put your ego to sleep, then v'li bi'er, then your heart is truly on fire, your heart is truly awake in the service of God and being a good human being. Sometimes in life, we have to look past ourselves and think about others and think about what God wants for us at the moment. In the story, Rabbi Shlomo Freifeld didn't mind that it probably looked a little funny, him taking off his own kippah in front of his own congregation, but he did what he felt was right in the moment. We must look back into our own lives and look out for opportunities when we think past ourselves and think, what does God want from me right now? What's the right thing to do? Not just what I want. What will be best and make this world a better place?
Three minutes, 25.
Good.
Yes, hi, my name is Avi Weinman. I'm from Yeshivas Novominsk, and I'm here to give a speech to a mixed audience. Non-Frum? Non-Frum, sorry. Chaim developed what we know today as a slip disc, which for those who have had it know it's a very, very painful move in the back that happens and it requires surgery. The doctor told him that he was scheduled for the surgery in a few weeks, but he should try to calm down on what he does, try not to move around with his back in order not to make it anything worse. Chaim decided anyway that with this slip disc, with the pain that it may come, he wants to go to synagogue 3 times a day to pray, especially because he was mourning for his father who died within the year and he needed to pray in public for him. He continued to go every single day, 3 times a day, with the slip disc. One day, there was a snowstorm, a heavy one, which made it much more difficult for Chaim to go to the synagogue. But he decided that anyway he wants to go, he wants to do it for his father, to pray in public for him. As he's about to start praying, he hears from someone that there's someone from the synagogue who he knows for many years and his good friend is waiting outside in a wheelchair because he couldn't walk and he was not able to come into the synagogue because of the snow. Chaim decides, before I'm going to start, I'm going to go out with my 2 sons and actually go lift up the wheelchair into the synagogue so he can also come in to pray with us. As they're lifting the wheelchair, Chaim hears a loud snap in his back. He doesn't know what it is. He goes to the rabbi and he tells him, Rabbi, I heard a snap in my back. I don't know what it is. I'm afraid that the pain may have got worse. I'm afraid I did something to my back. I will not be able to pray today. So he takes a seat. But for those who know, a slip disc, the pain does not come right away. It comes more or less after a half hour. A half hour passes, no pain comes. And he's wondering, he doesn't know what happened. He goes to the doctor the next day. And the doctor tells him, so let's take an MRI. If this is what happened, you heard a loud snap, something could have happened worse. We'll take an MRI. They take a second MRI, and it comes back clean. It moves back into place. So the doctor asks him, how is that possible? You had a bone that also moved, that was not allowing the slip disc to move back into place by itself. It was holding it out of place. You needed surgery. How is this possible? Chaim responds, I don't either know. But I know that it happened because I was helping and caring for my fellow friend. And that is why God made it move back into place, even though it was nearly impossible. The great sage Hillel once said over that the most important rule of the entire Torah is to love a fellow man like you love yourself, to love and to care. That is what the Torah cares most about, and that is what the Torah wants most from us. And if we do this, we can never lose out, because if the Torah promises something and tells us what to do, we cannot lose. And by the way, I know Chaim for many years since I know when the story happened a few years ago, and he's never had back pains ever since. Thank you.
Three minutes, 36 seconds. While the judges are about to ask them to make their totals, combine them, so we'll get to find out which of the 2 yeshivas have won. While they're doing that, I have to tell you quite seriously, one of the most amazing things in doing these competitions every year is to work with the boys, to see their nervousness, and then you make it up in your own mind, who's going to win, who's not going to win, and then they just stand up there on the day and they produced absolutely fabulous. I don't think I've heard such brilliant and well-constructed and well-delivered drushes for many a year from both yeshivas. I'm very glad that I'm not one of the judges judging this. It's, to my mind, extremely close. But if you hold on just a second, we'll find out what the real judges have to say. Of this year's Inter-Yeshiva public speaking competition, with a difference of only 2.5 points, is Yeshivas Novominsk.
Thanks for having us.
Great job, you guys.
Thank you very much.
Gentlemen, I'd just like to present the prizes to the teams. So if Yeshivas Novominsk, you could sit down for a minute, please. Please sit down.
Very good, Clyde. Very good. You made this Don't tell anyone else to pay.
I'd just like you to know the prizes are jointly sponsored by prize. Quiet. Calm down. The prizes are jointly sponsored by Yeshivas Novominsk, Rockaway, Life Prep, for contributing very handsomely, my dear self. So, to all the sponsors, thank you very much. Could I have the winning team up at the judges' table? Captain! Mr. Klein. Mr. Middleman. Mr. Wise. Yeshiva for Rockaway. Ezra. Judges, both teams together with the judges, please. Yeshiva Rockaway on the right, Sorry, on the left, my right. Yeah, over here. Team Novominsk here. Down the books. Rabbi Rubinstein.
Inter-Yeshiva basketball. Inter-Yeshiva basketball.